I realize a lot of people criticize professional cuddling, and they criticize the need to pay for money to get touched. Well, I don't always get a chance to share client stories that are very private, and people don't feel comfortable letting me talk about their lives, or nor are they going to come on here and share about it. But when I get the opportunity, you betcha I'm going to take advantage of it. And I have a really fantastic story that's been over a year in the making. So let me paint the picture for you. Imagine, you're young, you start having like allergies, and then 20s and 30s, like things start to get worse and worse. And eventually it gets to a point where you have reactions to very simple things that were no big deal before. You go out, you're out in public, and it becomes difficult to not have a reaction. You go to the doctor and they start saying, yeah, you're allergic to all these things. And with time, that list grows and grows to the point where now you don't have a choice but to live in isolation. And what I mean by that, the most familiar thing that a lot of us have as a cultural reference is like the bubble boy from Seinfeld, right? See, which unfortunately, I think in that episode, I think he dies, right? And it's a terrible, terrible situation. But he needs to live in this isolated space to protect himself, right? Or else tragedy. So, and again, I don't have a lot of knowledge on this subject. If you are interested, you can look up medical isolation and find out more people's stories. I only have one, and this is the only one I've ever worked with. And so in a weird way, they're like a bubble human, but they're not in a bubble, right? They live in a space. They live in a room. This is basically their entire world. Thankfully for the internet, they can connect all over the world and universe and wherever. And when it comes to being in person, this is the only possibility that they have. So again, I'm just going to paint some more of the picture. So imagining that having to figure out like how to get resources and, how to feed yourself and family and where you're going to live. And a lot of people aren't able to live a longer life because they don't have the resources. There are a lot of people that I've just from hearing stories from this client that aren't able to make it if they don't have money and a good job they can do online and all of that. So then that's the end. Luckily for my client, that wasn't the end of their story. They were able to navigate their world and doing it as best as they can. So we're going to get to that in a second. And all of this makes me wonder, again, when I get criticism about this, it's very little. I don't get a lot, but I know it's out there. And it has me ask the question, is touch a human need? I already know it is a human need. It is a human need, just in case you didn't know it is. But for some, is it a right? Is it a privilege? There's definitely responsibilities in that, and it's a choice, of course, always. And we often forget to think about like every possibility and person out there and who's deserving of touch. So, in the story that I'm about to share, it is with permission, and it looks like, it's been the last 6+ years that they've been in isolation and without touch at all. I think if I remember from just my memory, and again, I am going to do my best to honor their story, and in that there will be mistakes and there will be holes, and just bear with me here. So there's going to be things I'm like, I really wish I would have said, and I'll do my best. But this isn't a choice that they made, except it is a choice to live, right? Living is the choice, and having 6 years of not being able to have human contact in person is incredibly painful and difficult. I think, and this is what actually I was going to go to, I think there was a massage therapist at some point. I don't remember details. So things like that. There might be some things I don't remember, but I don't know the story around that. So now it's been years, and things start happening in the body as we get older and, hormones and all the things change in our bodies. For those of you who have experienced lack of touch or touch deprivation, it becomes like the body starts to have a reaction response. Like, it's painful. It can be very painful not to have touch. So they reach out, they have a therapist, they reached out and were like, what are the possibilities? And so in the beginning, it was really unknown. Like, so when the therapist reached out to the sexologist, Dr. Susan Kay, that I've mentioned in the past, and she reaches out to me, like, none of us knew what was going to be possible in this scenario. And so we were kind of treading on, like, and in a lot of ways it felt like life or death, right? Like, we're treading here. Is it possible for this person who has severe allergies to the point where if they go outside, they would die? And I don't say that. I felt like I said that very lightly, but I pause because that's what would happen. And can we make it possible for them to access touch? We didn't know. So very careful. There were phone calls, again, talking with therapists, trying to figure out, like, looking at all the situations and the details. And this is during a time of a pandemic too, right? And COVID. And like, if I brought COVID into the space, my goodness. And just so another point here, things that would not kill either of us, like, like a cold or, simple things that maybe I could introduce. Let's say they were things that they could get better, but let's say they needed medical care. So going to, like, leaving the space to go to the doctor or to getting any kind of medical thing, anything that they would need to leave their home for, like go to the hospital or whatever, that would kill them. Oh, and I haven't, like, discussed, like, what are the allergies? Like, what's the situation? So again, I'll say that now. I realize I haven't said it. So we're talking about severe food allergies and latex. I think this is the big one that's more environmental. And things I have learned on this journey with them is that there's latex everywhere. I mean, it's in the air. So we're talking about airborne allergens that could kill. And just, when we take it for granted, we walk around, we go to different buildings and different spaces, and there's all sorts of things in the air, and it doesn't affect us, but it can affect this person and would kill them. Something, just again, some remembering now, there was a time that they had the asphalt in the front of their house they redid it. And during that whole month, I mean, it was even more severe lockdown because our asphalt has, like, rubber, and then rubber, of course, has latex, and, like, all the things that we do that, again, it doesn't affect us. But that was even more severe, and, like, I couldn't come visit. Like, that door could not be opened. It had to be sealed. And so anyway, yes, when I say that it's wild how some of these allergies can be incredibly dangerous. Okay, so coming back to, like, the beginning. So we had these conversations and try to figure out what would I need to do for me to be able to enter this space, and then, like, also, like, how do you know if I'm causing you danger? Like, is there harm in this space? How would you know? And so there was, they said immediately there would be, like, some kind of, like, symptoms, and also just an intuition, like, knowing, like, oh, this is dangerous, I need to stay away. Like, they had built that such an amazing, and they always had this their whole life, but it's like body knowledge, like knowing my body does not like this isn't okay. So, like, at least we had the client had an internal ability to know, which is amazing and wonderful. So, like, get out kind of a thing, like, get out of the place, like, I could run out, and then they would deal with symptoms, which, again, is super scary, and, like, that I could potentially cause harm. So let's go down the list of things that, like, in the beginning were considerations. My diet, like, what would I eat? And the fact that I was not a vegan was very important. Like, most vegan foods would be not okay. Like, if I had it on my skin or, like, coming out of my pores, like, we just didn't know. So, like, I am a meat eater, and they were too. So, like, that worked. Like, that I have a diet that was closest. I remember avocado being, like, absolutely do not eat avocado. Like, okay, but like most, like, fruits and vegetables, the things that you would consider organic, like healthy, not okay, right? So that was it. My clothing. So, I said, well, I could just wear whatever you wear. Like and we talked about like body shapes and sizes. Like, do we have similar bodies so that I could just put on their clothes? So when I get there, and I'll go through like what the setup is like in a little bit, like how, when I show up, how I have to, like, the process of being able to then get into the session. So like my clothing, any kind of, like, my hair had to be, like, I needed to put it back, like, into like a bun or a braid or something, but I couldn't have any elastics, right? So because that would have latex. So, but I didn't want my hair could have something on it that could then touch them and then cause a reaction. Like, that's another thing. My hygiene products. So those of you who know me know, and I mentioned, I think, in other videos, that I'm pretty much a hippie. So I don't use any lotions, and I don't wear makeup, and I don't do deodorant. And when I wash, I don't even wash with soap. So you're all like, what? I realize that I just said a lot that might be like, huh? I don't understand. That's the thing. Okay, so I don't use a lot of products at all, barely. And like my hair is probably the thing that I use product on. And because we weren't sure even like if my skin touching their skin just from the oils like would cause like a breakout or reaction. So that worked. Like, okay, like that checked. Another check on the list of things that work or not. And it was wild to think that like my skin could be an allergy, like just because we wanted to touch. And the best kind of touch, in my opinion, is skin on skin. To be able to, with my hands. And so, of course, being really careful about, what I'm bringing into the space. So I also remember in the beginning some considerations around, like, just first of all, having human contact. Like, could they just have a person in their room? And did we need to have a glass between us? I remember that being a question. And then also thought, like, because I mentioned the skin thing, do I need to wear gloves? Like, how close could I get? During a time of a pandemic, we were talking about 6 feet, like all of the things that, so we understood that this was going to be a process, and over time we could get closer and closer. And the idea was, well, we can start with feet. So imagining putting our feet touching, like, that would be a big deal, right? It'd be really good. And like maybe touching just for like so many seconds and then backing off. So intermittent touching, because this is where we started. So now it's been over a year and we have our protocols all down, and I go and see them once a month for a couple hours. And I'd like to just go through kind of what that looks like now. So I am cognizant that day of like what I eat, and that I don't just like, I don't know, casually be like, oh, put some lotion on. Not that I do that, but like, actually yesterday I did put some like lotion on my legs, So being really cognizant of like what I'm allowing to touch my body, and watching kind of my food, or that I don't eat really, really close to the session. So give like plenty of hours, and of course rinse, shower, just kind of get that clear. And on the way there, I'll start taking off things that I know, like I have a certain ring that is, that could potentially have latex. I can now leave my jewelry, so all of my metal jewelry is okay for me to leave on. And I take the braid, I usually have like a braid on in my hair, so I'll take the elastics out, maybe I'll braid it or bun it. So I'm getting that ready. And my clothes, just something simple that I can just easily take off. That won't take long for me to remove all my clothing. So I arrive and walk through the door and go to the bathroom. And I think I've done this 2 different ways, but I think I go to this bathroom right away because there's one in the room, and there's some clothes set there for me already. I put the clothes on and put my clothes to the side. Oh, and my shoes and my keys, and I have a watch, so I have an Apple Watch. So my watch stays outside, right in the car, and I put my shoes outside, and I leave my keys outside. And then I will come in, bathroom, change clothes, walk out and grab the COVID test. do the COVID test, and put the mask on. So they purchased a mask for me, and I wear the mask, the same one every time. So like they keep it, I'm going to put it back in its package, but it's, that they can control where that mask goes, right? So they're taking care of it. Mask, I do the test, I mask up, and then everything is all set. We sit on the floor and we just talk at 6 feet for 15 minutes and check in about our month and things that have happened. And there's usually a lot to talk about because we're both very interesting people, of course. and bringing up some really good topics. And then 15 minutes, you check the test, and I have never come positive in the space, thank goodness. And then we start the session. Now, we've kind of gotten a little bit of a routine, but we've tried many, many things over the course of the year and a half. And there's now a massage table in this space. And so there's an opportunity to do like all full body, just touch. And it's really light. Like when we say massage, not really a massage, it's just like the slightest touch because the body is sensitive to any kind of like hard touch. At the same time, it's been really fun to explore impact as well. So there's been some impact toys we've brought in because as a person, as I've learned, as a person who doesn't receive touch, sometimes just the variety is really important, and maybe pulling out some things that are just a little more shocking. And I guess it would fall under kink kind of things. Not that this is in any way, there's no sexual impulse here or any desire for that direction, but just having different types of sensations. For someone who is touch deprived, it might be important at some point to introduce different sensations so that they can like almost awaken different parts of themselves. So there's this like massagey kind of thing on the table, and we'll switch, which is really fun too. So then I get a little bit of that as well. It's nice. And then we get to the ground, and I will be honest with y'all. In the beginning, of course, there was like very specific touch on specific body parts, but at this point, we've been working for so long, there's more skin on skin, which luckily has not caused to be any threat. They've not seen any kind of major reactions or responses to having more skin on skin. I will say, if I remember in the beginning, after the first couple sessions, there was like almost I don't want to say it was an immune response because I don't have the medical expertise of their experience in this, but I remember them telling me that their body was like, oh, there's something was new, and there was maybe some tiredness or just a different bodily reaction in the beginning. But that I have not heard that's a thing anymore. And we do lots of skin on skin, so there might be shirtless and just, again, exploration. The one thing that is still vital, that the line that we will not cross, is like there will not be any type of fluid touch. So like I have my mask, and they have a respirator. I forgot to mention, they have a full like respirator. So that sometimes makes some positions a little more complicated. But the respirator provides an extra layer of protection. So I'm not in contact with any of their like saliva, and they're definitely not in contact with any of mine. It's definitely a space we haven't explored. Like what would it be if there was actual fluid? And or not that I need to say, do I need to say this? Like genital fluid, like that's absolutely not a thing. I don't know how that would be relevant, but you know what I'm saying? Like this is definitely a platonic, non-sexual space. And that's really important. That, but imagining, I'm just putting it out there as if there was a need, or if someone was wanting to build a relationship with someone who's in medical isolation, I do not know at that level what's possible, right? And in my heart, like there's a part of me that kind of wishes that there would be relationships and more possibilities for people in medical isolation to have relationships and to be able to have an everyday companion. Again, every person's situation is different, and it's complicated. So we do lots of different positions, because also as a middle-aged person, you know, pains, body pains are a real thing. So being like on our side or on our back, like I end up getting some back pain a little bit, you know, just because we're on a floor. We're not in the bedroom space. They have another room for sleeping. So we're more in like the work office, and we do work with what we have there, and constantly looking for other possibilities and like other ways to connect and to do human exploration. Again, looking at, it's like as if this person is a completely new person, like new in the exploration in their human experience because of their limitations or opportunities. Everything is new. So I think that is everything I wanted to say about it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't know if I can answer all your questions, but definitely here advocating for making touch possible, accessible. It's super important that if you want touch, that there's a way. That matters a lot to me.